you don't yet own it. So, you go to the conveyancing solicitor asking for legal advice pertaining to your mortgage, and they give you illegal advice by advising you to execute the disposition of an interest over a property you do not own, which belongs to somebody else, which is registered in the name of somebody else. And the whole purpose of you seeking the mortgage advance is to get the credit in order to acquire the property that you've already executed an illegal and void charge over. Because everybody does it, because all the conveyancing solicitors have been taught to do this, does that make it okay? Does that make it lawful or equitable? Okay, from the spring of 2009 until August 2009 and beyond in other sets of proceedings, Michael issued a counterclaim against Bradford and Bingley because they had been unable to provide evidence that A, there was a valid mortgage contract in existence, which is illegal, and B, that there was a valid charge in existence, which is illegal, and C, that the bank had any money to lend him in the first place, and that all the transaction amounted to at best was an electronic transfer of credit. Now, credit is not money. Credit is only acceptable as money if it's transferred from bank to bank under a much smaller interest rate than they ever charge against customers. So, let's just recap here. The contract which doesn't exist has to comply with Section 2 of the Law of Property Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1989, which prescribes very clearly that every single mortgage contract must be signed by both the bank and the customer in order for it to be valid. If that isn't the case, the contract must be considered as void in law. Okay? In all our experiences, until these arguments that we presented became so prevalent that they could no longer be ignored, we did not witness one single mortgage transaction which had either a valid contract under Section 2 or under Section 1(3) of the same Act, the Law of Property Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1989, the deed must be witnessed by an independent, the signature on the deed rather, must be witnessed at the moment of execution, meaning the moment you put the signature upon it, it has to be witnessed by an independent witness who must attest by signature and a declaration of their address or their location or their business, if they're a solicitor, and their profession. And if that declaration attesting it to the mortgage or signature is not done properly, or it's done after the date it was signed, it's void under Section 1(3) of the 1989 Act. Now, we have also never seen, until the last couple of years, any deed or charge, because they're called both, that complied with Section 1(3). Now let's just imagine this. So how many people in this room, if they knew in their hearts and through the diligent observation of the facts, how many people in this room believe that if they go into a courtroom and they present the facts to a judge, that the judge will apply the law in accordance with what is presented before him? How many people believe that would happen in a court of law in this country? Right. There's only you who raised your hand, just in case you don't, well, because you couldn't see. And I empathise with your faith that that would be the case. Because when we began this civil war, which is what it is, when we began, I in my heart had this idea that sooner or later we'd take it into a certain court and some judge who was there for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons, would do the right thing and say, no, there's no valid deed, there's no valid contract, this man should not be thrown out of his house. Every single time, all of those arguments have been presented, with all of the case law that supports the points that we're making, every single time, the judges have thrown out the arguments as totally without merit, without paying heed to the facts. Now, there are many different reasons why this is or why this could be. However, I'm going to continue chronicling exactly what's happened in the least expansive amount of time possible, because there really is a lot to go through. But nevertheless, in broad strokes, when Michael went in and made these arguments, a judge called Inglis in Nottingham, who was acting more like Nero than a judge, he decided that the facts didn't matter and ordered the violent eviction of Michael from his home. He ignored all the facts after numerous hearings, after appeals. Michael's case only got stronger, but he was making the same arguments from the beginning. So, at around the same time, he was doing this and coming to the end just before he was violently thrown out of his home. I went into the High Court, phoned on behalf of the trustees of my family's private property trust. Now, my dad is the founding trustee, and many years ago, he was approached by Bank of Scotland, and they said to him, "You've got £2 million worth of property, you've got no borrowings. We want to help." And he said, "I don't need help. Why would I need borrowings when I have no debts? And why do I need your help? You're going to have to convince me." It took a number of months to convince him. He's a straight down the line alpha male, 70-year-old Geordie who's done it his own way his entire life, and he will not bow to authority, and he will not be bullied. In fact, he goes for bullies. He always has. So, given that, my dad says, "Right, look, you're going to have to offer me something much better than what I've got, and you're going to have to give me some kind of undertaking that you're not going to pull the rug from under our feet at some point." And they offered a rolling credit facility. That meant that all he had to do was ring up and say how much the property was valued at. They would send their valuer, and if they agreed that it was set at the right level, they would advance whatever the credit was. And they continued to do this as the trustees acquired more properties, and they got themselves into a position just before the completely manufactured credit crunch, where they were stretched to the point where